We are men. We are warriors.
We are dads.
Dads with a purpose. Dads with an edge. We sharpen our skills so we can show up best for others. We have one shot in life to be a dad. Why not make it epic?
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this podcast, show, and movement. When it comes to your life and the mistakes that you guys have made, maybe it's a previous relationship you've had before marriage. Maybe it was something that might have even happened when you were a kid. Maybe it's something that happened this morning. Maybe it's something you did that you lost your patience with your kids. But any mistake that we've made as men, husbands, and fathers, I think we can all agree that we have a hard time letting these things go. I've been working with men now for 10 years. I've heard the stories of men, the things that have happened to them, their mind, their heart, nose to nose, toes to toes, thousands of stories. And one thing I can tell you is men we are our own worst enemy at times. We're our own worst critic at times. And that is really unfortunate because sometimes the hell that we're experiencing as men, husbands, and fathers is what we are saying to ourselves and how we are beating ourselves up for previous mistakes that we have made in the past. My guest today is Zach Babcock, and many of you guys probably know who Zach is. If you follow him, you probably follow me, but he owns what is called Underdog Empowerment, or Alpha Underdog Empowerment. Zach is a fascinating individual. Didn't come from a very good upbringing whatsoever. He and I share a lot of very similar things when it comes to our childhood and things that we experienced, things that impact us for years to come, right? Now, Zach, he actually decided early on to go down a path that wasn't so positive. He ended up spending actually several years in prison. And if you get to know Zach and his story, you truly understand what happened and why it happened and, what he did about it. And even, getting out of prison only 8 years ago in 2014 and what he's done over the past 8 years is absolutely remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. The funny thing about Zach, too, is that I've been following him for quite some time. Turns out we live in the exact same city. Here in St. Louis, we only live like 10 minutes from each other. I ran into him at a wrestling practice that our kids were at. He and I struck up a conversation, and we were like, oh my gosh, we follow each other. This is really cool. We should have each other on each other's podcasts. And what I can tell you is Zach and I have actually formed this really great friendship right now. And this week, actually, on July 15th, I'm actually speaking at his Alpha Underdog boot camp that he's hosting here in St. Louis. Hundreds of people are going to be out there, entrepreneurs. If you're out there, if you're actually listening to this particular podcast on a Monday, if you're in the St. Louis area, if you're around this particular weekend, you want to come see me and several others speak. And if you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a business owner, side hustler, or whatever, you'll want to go check that out. I can tell you there's going to be some amazing people there. But today's podcast, it's emotional. It's a story that you won't ever forget. But the theme that you'll really pick up from this story is how can you let go of the past, the mistakes that you've made, push forward, and somehow, some way become successful. And I'm not just talking about successful in your businesses. I'm talking about successful in your life, in your marriage. Zach is a father. He's a on point, intentional father. He's married. He's an on-point, intentional husband, and a lot of times this comes with a lot of baggage and self-criticism. Like, how can we show up if we're constantly beating ourselves up? That's today's podcast. Really excited for you guys to listen to this one today. Before we jump in, here is the iTunes review of the week, gentlemen.
This week's review comes to us from Dr. Jank, titled "Better Late Than Never." 5 stars. Dr. Jank writes, I've always considered myself a good dad and husband, but recently I got slapped in the face with reality. I realized that I needed help to be the best dad and husband that I can be. After sifting through a lot of uninteresting and or preachy content, I found the Dad Edge. From day one, I was hooked. Finally, I was hearing from people I could relate to and was getting practical, honest advice. I started listening on Podcast One and have devoured the first 100 episodes. I like that even episodes that don't pertain to me at all still teach me something. I can already see the difference in myself, my 3 kids, and in my wife. I've ordered Larry's book and I'm waiting to be accepted into the Facebook group. I can't thank Larry and Sean enough for giving me what I have needed but didn't know it. I just wish I knew about this show years ago. Thanks. Dr. Jank, thank you for your review. Larry, back to you.
Dr. Jank, thank you so much for this amazing review. Gentlemen, if you haven't left me a rating and review, please go do so. It helps out the show, it helps out the movement, helps us get more eyes on the show. But really good stuff. I appreciate you sharing this. All right, gentlemen, we're going to get right to it. Here we go. Zach, what's up, man?
Dude, I am excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Larry.
I am too. This is, what's kind of crazy is that obviously a lot of people podcast, on through Zoom and virtually, and here we are in each other's backyard. You're sitting in my office, so kind of crazy, man. It's a small world.
It is a small world, and this is a really nice setup.
Thanks, man. Like we were saying, man, my office, I mean, a lot of people see it because I do a lot of live videos on social, and obviously the interviews. A lot of people think like this is like a fake background in that, but my I can't take credit for it. My wife did it, so it's actually her fingerprint on this whole office. So,
Man, that's probably the case in most men's lives. The wife is the one that actually makes it come to life, right?
Right. But I have to admit, like I thought, you think of your wife like doing like some kind of decor for like like a masculine setup, and you think like there's great, but like she's got like the wood like stuff in here and the big logos, and like she definitely gave it like this super masculine touch, which I really like.
Gotta appreciate that.
Yeah, man. Well, dude, I've been following you, man, for actually a very long time, and I can't remember exactly how I came across you. I know it was Instagram, and I think it was an interview you did with Andy Frisella, and I've interviewed Andy now twice. And I just remember, I think I clicked on an interview and I was like, who is this guy? And then I kind of went through your social and I was like, man, we've interviewed a lot of the same people, Ben Newman and John Lee Dumas and just some of these, Bedros Koulian, just a lot of these amazing people. And I really kind of dove in a little bit to your backstory. And of course, before we hit record today, we batted around just a few facts and I was like, man, this guy's fascinating. And then we ran into each other at our kids' wrestling practice.
That was cool, man. That's when I was like, man, I know Larry's cool as fuck now.
Yeah, dude. And of course, you can't miss you with that face sweater, man. That thing is legit. So,
man, the story behind it, it's the beard goes down to the belly button. I've been saying I will not shave it until I get a 6-pack. So I've been actually getting, you see what we were talking about, the fasting app or whatever. Yeah. I'm dialed in now.
Dang, man. Well, dude, so how long did it take to grow that? Because right now it's to your, like, just below your chest, it looks like.
Yeah. So if, it'll go down to the belly button if you, like, hold it out. Yeah. It'll be 4 years in December.
Holy shit. You haven't shaved in 4 years?
Nothing.
Not even trimmed?
I trimmed, like, the mustache because, anytime you eat food, it, like, pushes the hair in, and that's, like, super annoying. But other than that, no trimming.
Oh my gosh, man. You want to hear a funny story about face sweaters before we get started on all the serious stuff?
Yeah, let's go.
So you see mine, this is about as long as I grow it, and there's a reason behind that. So my biological father is of Jewish descent, and right, so he has like really tight, like curly hair on the top of his head, and that's kind of like a heretic thing of Hebrew, right, of that descent. And my dad's now bald on top. It still has a bunch of curly hair around the sides and back, and I don't have curly hair. Like I have straight hair, but my facial hair it's like a real face curly. Full of Cheerios is what it looks like. And so I've tried to grow it out. And when I first met my wife 25 years ago, like I was clean shaven, and I've tried to grow it out, and she's like, oh my God. She's like, literally your face looks like a face full of pubic hair. You need to, but so I was like, I'll try the beard oil. She's like, yeah, good job. Now it looks like shiny pubes. And then I tried like the waxes. She's like, oh great. Now it looks like waxy pubes. And I'm like, all right, so it's about as long as I can get it without it like literally like just, it curls crazy. But yeah, man, I'm envious.
That's funny, man. You couldn't get away from the pubes no matter what you tried to do.
No matter what, man. No matter what. But anyway, I mean, obviously, this podcast is not about my facial pubic hair look-alike thing going on. It's about you. So I want to dive into your story, man. I did a little bit of research on you, but I mean, I want to start with your childhood. Like, that's where a lot of this started for you. So let's get started there.
Yeah, dude. And I'm glad that you want to start there, because nothing against a lot of the other podcasts I've been on, really cool people and whatnot, but a lot of people, they just want to talk about the business or stuff going on now. And I'm like, man, the real core issues are what happened when you were a kid, and whatnot. But that's why I like your brand a lot, man. A big reason that I had like a lot of traumatizing things happen. One was, when my dad died when I was 7, they got my parents, and then I had an incredible life all the way up until about 6 years old. Like, it was just like awesome. But then just a whole bunch of traumatic things that started happening right after another. And one was, the parents divorced. And then right after that, my mom was working 3 jobs and I hardly ever seen her. And I only see my dad every other weekend. And that went on for about a good, I don't know. So we moved into the new house. A few months after that, they got divorced. A few months after that, I'm not seeing my mom at all. And then we move. And then I started getting bullied right away. We moved to Ferguson, Missouri, and I started getting bullied right away.
Ferguson?
Yeah.
I grew up in Florissant.
Oh, okay.
So we were like right next to each other.
That is crazy, man. Dude, like all the synchronicities and stuff. But yeah, man, long story short, we moved to Ferguson, started getting picked on. I didn't know what to do, so I'm like trying to ask my dad what do I do or whatnot when I do get to see him. And then he dies. And this all happens like within a year. And then after that, then I got a dog, and like I got attached to that dog because like that was and then my dog ran away right after that. So like all this happened in a year, and then I started getting in trouble in the schools and all this stuff, and was in and out of juveniles, detentions, boys homes. But like I was telling you beforehand, I think the thing that really did a lot of damage was my mom put me in the first time before the courts got their hands on me, and she put me in a rehab because I was smoking weed and I wasn't going to school.
And how old were you?
I was 9 years old.
9, okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to school because, school was never for me, bro. Like, it just wasn't for me. They said I had ADD, ADHD, ABCD, EFG, all that shit.
Right.
All that shit, man.
Yeah.
It just wasn't for me, and I wouldn't go, and I didn't have a dad in my life, no disciplinary figure, and it's hard for a mom to, play that role with a boy or whatnot. So she put me into rehab, and she was doing what she thought was best for me, and doing it out of love. But, that traumatized me. That made me feel like I wasn't good enough to be her son and that she didn't love me. And then, of course, I got kicked out because I'm in there. I'm 9 years old. The next oldest person, or the next person closest to me in my age, is 13 years old. And, like, I'm feeling, like I got to do something to try to, prove my worth or whatever. And so anyways, I picked a fight with a guy, got beat up and got kicked out. And then they recommended that they put me in a psych ward, and my mom said okay. And so then she put me in the psych ward, and I literally thought I was gonna die 24/7 in there, like it was a freak show. It was like a nightmare, and I won't even go into all the details unless you want to. But I just felt like I wasn't good enough to be my mom's son, and I felt like that she left me to die, pretty much, and that was the first go around. Then I was just in and out of detentions, juveniles, boys' homes, and all that throughout my entire youth.
Man, so I'm going to ask you some more detail. Before I do, I just want to honor you, man, for a minute, because we didn't mess around in the kiddie pool when it came to some of these details. You jumped right into the deep end with being super authentic. So I honor you for that, man. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
One thing about this podcast, Dad Edge, man, like I love when men just they get started right away when it comes to just, hey man, here's my story, here's all my imperfections, here's some of the dirty laundry, right? Because once we start doing that, like one thing I've noticed just by human beings in general is that's where we relate to each other, is that getting deeper. So your dad passed away at 7.
Yeah.
So did you have siblings growing up?
Yeah, I had my older sister, and you know what's crazy? So right when my dad passed away, we were in that hospital, and my sister, she's 3.5 years older than me, and so I'm 7, she's 10, and she's bawling her eyes. They come in and tell us my dad's dead, and we go to hug my mom, and she's just bawling her eyes out, and I'm just quiet, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was like, why am I not crying or whatever? She's crying, I'm not, But what I was doing is I was stuffing my emotions.
Even at that age.
And that's how I learned to deal with my emotions right there. And that's how I did it for the rest of literally, bro, I just learned how to regulate my emotions a few months ago. I didn't know that you could calm yourself down just by going, like, I didn't know that calmed you down, man. Like I was so intense, and like I stuffed everything down, and then any type of emotion I would show was emotional outbursts, like rage and intense and stuff. And that was it, you know, because I was told you can't show those emotions as a boy, man, whatever, you know. So it was wild.
How did your dad pass away?
He died in a car crash. They found weed, alcohol, and cocaine in his system. He could have been high on all three at the same time. Pretty sure he was drunk for sure. Probably was drunk, had some cocaine. Probably had all three at the same time.
Wow. So the reason I ask, you know, how he passed away, because sometimes, you know, when there's like some sort of disease like cancer or something like that, like, okay, we know it's coming. But for you, like, your life changed in an instant. And it sounds like the very first exposure to that news, it was the very first time you experienced like, I'm just not going to feel this, right? From a 7-year-old's perspective. But let's just fast forward, you know, some time after he passes away, and it really, really starts to sink in, like, man, my dad's not here. Like, what are some of the memories that you have just of the thought processes that you were going through as a little kid, just simply realizing my dad is no longer here? What was going on for you?
Yeah, man. Do you remember the movie Double Jeopardy?
Oh yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that came out. We actually went and seen that movie with my dad, like right before he passed or whatnot. And I used to hope and pray that that's what was going on with my dad, that he was still alive and stuff, you know, and like he was going to come back. I used to like literally think he would come back and shit, man. It was crazy. But yeah, man, used to think like he would come back. I used to wait on that. And then I realized he wasn't coming back. And whew, wow, bro, you brought it out of me. I used to play football, and all my friends' dads would be at practice and stuff. And I used to just like, man, wish I knew how that felt, you know?
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think especially when you're a kid, and I see it in you now, and trust me, man, when I come on, you know, when I'm on your show, you'll bring it out in me too. When you're a little kid and you see your friends who have dads, especially I think the era that you and I grew up, and even the area that you and I grew up, right? It wasn't the easiest. And there's that part of you as a kid that you look around at your friends, the kids you play sports with, kids in your school, and you're like, why don't I have a dad? Or like, I wish I did have a dad. Or like, I remember growing up where I didn't have a dad in my life at some points in my life. And I, you know, look across the street. Actually, we had a next door neighbor where this dad and his son, I'll never forget his name. Tom was the dad's name. Mike was the little boy, Gallagher, and literally next door to us. And he played soccer with his son every single night. And his son, Mike, had a dream to be like this phenomenal goalie in soccer. And that's exactly what he did. But his dad was out with him every night, and like until the sun would go down. And it was just amazing to me being like, God bless, man, I wish I had that. Like just something like that. But when you're little, those aren't the words that come about. In fact, I think in a way you really don't even realize it until you're looking at it, you know it. But then when you're older, you look back on it and you're like, that's what that little kid in me felt at the time.
Yeah.
You know, fast forwarding just a couple of years, were there any, or maybe even right after that, I don't know, were there any father figures that came into your life when you were a little kid?
Man, no. And it's something that I, you know, have a lot of shame and guilt about, that I've been working through, because I didn't let my mom have other boyfriends. Like they'd come home and I was like, fuck no, you know? And like, dude, you ever seen, who hasn't seen Forrest Gump?
Oh yeah.
I would go make the Forrest Gump noises while my mom and them were having sex, and like they make them stop and shit. Like that's how bad I was, you know. Like I didn't want no other dad around or figure. I don't know why I fought that so much. So there's still some work to do there, obviously, and see why I was doing that. But yeah, I didn't want no other father figure, but I did, but I didn't. You know, it's like a contradiction. It's like the internal is what I wanted was to have that, but I didn't want to get hurt again, and so like I pushed away and all these other things, you know.
I have a theory on that if you want to hear it.
For sure.
Same thing. You know, my biological father left when I was 9 months old. My mom got remarried when I was 4. She stayed married to him till I was 10. And then there was definitely a good stretch of time before my mom had a serious relationship, and there were boyfriends in and out. So I saw like these father figures that would come in for months or seasons or maybe a yearish, give or take. And there was that part of me that desperately wanted like that father role in my life. But I was, to be real honest, I was exactly like you. I was kind of a jerk to these guys. And my mom would always be like, why are you acting like this with these guys? And I couldn't tell her why, but I look back on it now and I'm like, it was that exact same reason. I was like, I desperately want like a father figure, but I don't want to lose. I've already lost one and another. I don't want to do this again. So like there was this part of me, and my mom, you know, nothing against my mom, but she sort of just attracted these same toxic men. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to get close to them, even though like you desperately wanted like that male figure in your life. So like I would be rude. I would, you know, say things that weren't very nice. And I think that was the reason why. It's probably the exact same reason why for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like you wouldn't have never figured that out back then, but looking back now, you could kind of see the reasons why, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the teenage years? That's one thing I'm really, you know, I look back on my teenage years where you're like, it's kind of like those years of like rite of passage. And you and I have both interviewed Bedros Koulian, who, you know, he hosts the Squire event, which is the rite of passage for father and son. It's a really cool thing. But those teenage years, man, especially for a young man, especially for a boy, those are like opportune years for us. And from an experience point of view, what did things look like for you when you were a teenager?
I was a gangster rapper.
You got any music online that we have heard?
Yeah, I actually posted videos of me rapping 10 years ago because it came up on my Facebook on the timeline or whatever.
No way.
Everybody was like, damn, you're pretty good. And I was like,
yeah,
right on. That was like years that you should have seen me when I first started. I was pretty bad, but that was my thing, man. I was inspired by Eminem, and, you know, it was like my hero as growing up, and I wanted to be, you know, like him. And I was in a rap group and all that, and we used to do shows and take it like, and I wasn't even the best rapper in the group, like my boy Pat was by far.
Yeah.
I wasn't a slouch, but I was, you know, wasn't the best. But,
right.
But I was definitely the business guy of it. I was the one that would make stuff happen as far as like getting tickets for shows, selling the tickets, getting the studio time, and all that stuff.
So teenage, okay. So I know I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit, but let's go back to being 9. And you said you felt like you were going to die in that psych ward. What was happening?
All right. There's this really good book. I don't know if you read it yet. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
I haven't read it, but I've had so many of the podcast guests tell me about that book. But yeah, go ahead.
Bro, like I read that book and I shake uncontrollably because the guy is explaining what's going on inside me better than I know. And I'm like, wow. You know, it's like, it's so, you know, for anybody that's got any unresolved trauma or PTSD, it's a must read. It isn't going to feel good reading that book, and it's going to bring up a lot of ugly shit that you're going to deal with, but you're going to become a better person if you go head on and face it. But yeah, man, you know, he gets the second chapter on there, and he's explaining the psych ward because he worked in a psych ward, and he explains it exactly how it was, just horrific. The staff abuse you, and they actually get off to it. Like, I don't know why, but they abuse you, yell at you, scream at you, physically abuse you, whatnot. There's other crazy kids in the corner, like screaming, and other crazy kids in the corner laughing, and you think you're going to die 24/7. I'm getting woken up at like 3, 4, 2 a.m. in the morning by the doctors, and they're shoving drugs in me and taking my blood, and I don't know what they're putting me on. I'm doped up and lethargic all the time. It was crazy, man. Like legit, like how they put it out there is crazy.
How long were you there?
5 days, but any second is too long, you know?
5 days too long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people really understand the experience behind that.
Yeah.
So 5 days later, what happens after you leave?
My mom got me out, and because she came up and visited me and see me all drugged up, and she's like, oh, hell no, and got me up out of there and got me off all the medications they had me on. But, kind of the damage was already done at that point,
So what did the next, week, month, season, what did the next year look like at home? And maybe even, did she put you back in the school system? What did that look like? I don't really know. There's still, it's crazy. So like my buddy Paul, that I was locked up with, he got out and he's got his own business and now and doing good and shit now too. We were in Moberly together, which was the last prison that I was in. And when I was getting out, I went back for 8 months, but that was even longer than the 4 years I did the first time. But because I had kids now, and all I was thinking about was getting home to them and stuff. And I got locked up right before I was getting out into the hole because my cellie had a knife in the cell, and you can't tell on people or nothing like shit like that. And so now I'm freaking out, like, man, am I even going to get home to my kids and I even do shit? And that was so traumatic, and I don't even remember who my cellie was. And he was like, hey, man, do you ever blow up your cellie? I was like, man, who was my cellie? He's like, you don't remember? It was that dude that got you jammed up? I was like, yeah, but I can't remember him. It's just, that's what trauma does sometimes. It's like, it suppresses it. And so a lot of the stuff that we were talking about, I didn't even remember until, when I started doing MDMA assisted psychotherapy sessions, and it literally brings it out, brings those suppressed memories back up so you can experience them and deal with them and feel them and get them out, and so I don't really know what happened the next year. I know I went right back to smoking weed and was not going to school again, and because I eventually got into the court system after that, but I don't remember like a lot of it. And so this was like right after that whole thing, right? Like you were how old?
Yeah, 9 years old.
Wow.
And then I know as soon as I got out, I went right back to smoking weed, of course. I probably couldn't wait to get my hands on some weed after getting out of the psych ward,
Yeah, probably. You just do anything to kind of calm you down, and just not think about that experience, right? Just somehow soothe in some way, shape, or form.
And it sounds like that's what you should do, but that's actually the worst thing you can do,
Right. Yeah. The more you repress, like one of the things that we teach our guys, like in our community and stuff like that, is it's actually a good thing, even though it doesn't feel like it in the moment, to whatever uncomfortable emotions come up, just to freaking feel them. And just, to be quite honest, sit in the pain, because the more you put it off by, through substance or shoving it down or whatever, it's going to rear its head. It becomes like this festering, infected, like
it gets worse.
It does. And, so, let's move to more like your high school years. Like just did you go to high school?
No.
Okay. So what was like 13 to, 18 look like for you?
Yeah. So I went to high school, but I would never go consistently. And I went for like a few months and whatnot. I was in and out of juveniles, detention, boys. Like I literally was like, I can name off a laundry list of different places that I was at. So it was like, for me, the best way I can experience it is like I was never like had a permanent home. And then when I was away, I would always wonder if people even thought about me or cared about me and stuff like that. And so I didn't feel seen and heard. And a lot of times, especially like, man, in the Forrest Gump movie, man, like when he's going to bed at night and he's talking about, he's like, that's the loneliest sign, like same thing in there. And then I remember in that movie too, when they gave him back the stack of mail that he wrote to Jenny, and she had a different address, so they returned it. That was the worst, whenever you'd write people and then they didn't come back or whatever, or they never wrote back. But yeah, just in and out of juveniles, detention, all that stuff. And I got out, the last time I was locked up as a juvenile, I was 16 years old. And so I was like, man, fuck it. I'm tired of this shit. I'm just going to take my GED when I'm in here, and so they won't have to fuck with me anymore or whatever. And I did that in 3 months, passed the GED and got out and was doing good for a little bit. And then I went out and caught cases with my buddies one night. We were just being stupid. We didn't need to go out and steal, but we went out to Ladue and was hitting cars and stuff out there. And then we got caught up, and I took the rap for everybody. And that sent me down to the adult prisons and all that stuff.
Wow. So when did you go to like real prison? How old were you?
18. I went to a treatment program the first time on probation, did that. It was like a 7-month total deal because it was a 120 program, but I had to wait 3 months in county to get sentence and then go sit in Bon Terre, which is the diagnostic prison, until they would actually send me off to the actual treatment prison. So 7 months there, did that, got out, got right back on the drug. At this point, I'm doing all the crazy drugs, like the heroin, the crack, and all that stuff, and got right back on that, and didn't last long, lasted like 6 months or so, and then I went away for the 4 years flat.
4 years, and where was that?
Mainly in Pacific. They tried sending me to a year-long treatment, and the thing with the treatment is like whenever you go do the treatment, you come home on probation versus parole. And I know you're like, a lot of people are like, what's the difference? Well, probation is where your time kind of like starts over. It freezes. Like as soon as you get home, like, so you say you do 10 months of your 7-year sentence, and then they, cause you did 10 months in this treatment, then they let you home. Well, that's all you got accounted towards your thing, and your time that you're doing on probation doesn't count. Versus if you come home on parole, all the time you did counts, plus every single day you are at home, you have a finite end date instead of it pausing, if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah, I think
that's hard to explain it.
Right. I'm going to ask you a really dumb question.
Okay.
But I'm genuinely curious about it. As far as prison goes, right? There's so many movies, right? You got Shawshank, you got you have all these movies that you could see what prison life could be like. I've seen the show. I used to actually watch the show 60 Days In, and that scared the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. What is that experience? What was that experience like for you?
It was frightening as all get up going into it. Of course, I'm 19 when I'm going into like the real prison, because like the treatment, I was scared to go to the treatments the first time, but then I was like, oh, is this just a treatment or whatever? But then I was going to the real prison. I was scared to death, like I was losing sleep in St. Louis County Jail waiting to get sentenced and stuff and all that. But it's very much so a lot like what you see, but then there's just so much that they can't never capture. The best way I could put it is like, it's a psychological warfare 24/7 in there. You can't, you just can't trust anybody or anything in there. But you get used to it, which is sad. After a while, you become like institutionalized, or just it's normal to you at some point, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, man, it's not a place you'd want to be. It's nobody walks around smiling. Everybody minds their own business. If you are a stand-up dude, and in prison terms, stand-up dude meaning you don't rat on people, you mind your own business, and you don't let nobody punk you, and you stand on your word. Your words are everything. Then you're fine. But yeah, so if you just do those things, you'll be okay. You'll be fine. Yeah, you're going to get in a few fights when you first get there, because they're going to test you and see if you're going to stand up for yourself. But if you do, then you should be fine.
Wow. And you were there for 4 years?
Yeah.
What about relationships as far as like outside of prison? Like your mom, your sister, friends, what was going on there? My
mom, dude, even though she, traumatized the fuck out of me with that shit. And like there's other things that she did. Like, whenever I would, I'm a boy, right? And so I didn't have a father figure. Plus I'm flying off the rails, and I'm in a constant fight or flight response mode all the time and don't know how to calm myself down, all that. So I'm definitely, pushing her past her limits all the time, and, past her breaking points. But when I would push her past her breaking points, she would scream at me and say things like, you're going to remember this when I'm dead and stuff. And, that kind of sticks with you, coming from mom. But she also at the same time was the most support beam I ever had in my life. And she was always there for me. Like, she literally spoiled me with affection, not material things, but every day I can remember always told me I can do anything I put my mind to. She always believed in me, and she was always there for me, to answer the call and come see me, even though, she did put me in there. So yeah, she had her faults and had her wrongs, but she was also a great mom in that sense. And I knew that she loved me and that she truly did care about me,
Wow. What's your relationship with her like now?
She died. She died right after I got out of prison the last time. I got out in October 2nd, 2014, and then she died December 2015. But the really cool part about that is that she did get to see me turn my life around, which, I'm at peace with that. She got to see me actually get out and be a father and turn my life around, which meant the world to me.
Yeah, for sure. How did she pass away, if you don't mind me asking?
Stage 4 lung cancer.
Okay.
She smoked, 2 packs a day her whole life and didn't have healthy, lifestyle at all.
Yeah. First of all, obviously it's never easy to lose somebody close to you. So it's interesting, right? Because we talked about how your father passed away, which was extremely, no one saw that coming, right? On the flip side, you have your mom, right? Or stage 4 lung cancer. That someday this is going to happen. You get out October 2nd, 2014. She passes away December 2015. Obviously, within that time frame, I'm guessing you knew that she had that, correct?
Yeah, she got diagnosed with it like 3 or 4 months after I got out, early 2015. Like we knew by April for sure because I was taking her to the hospital by then. So yeah, she got diagnosed pretty quickly right after I got out.
So talk to me about this time period from October 2014 to December 2015. You're taking your mom to treatment. You have this relationship with her. She's watching her son that she loves turn her life around. What was going on in that 15-month period?
Yeah, man. I came home on fire, obviously. So I was like, I don't care. I'm not going back, and I'm going to do whatever I got to do to make it work for my family. And I'm never going to leave my kid's side again. Like that was the thing for me. And, I got into network marketing and, was doing that. I did that for the first 2 years coming home. And
which company, if you don't mind me asking?
I was in Zango. They got bought out by Zija, and then Zija got bought out by Isogenics.
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. All right. Yeah. I was just curious, but yeah, go ahead.
Long history.
Yeah, they all are, I think.
Yeah. But yeah, I was in there and, I was, right out the gate, I came in hot and got my income up to almost $2,000 a month. Nothing like I wasn't rich or anything, but man, that $2,000 a month I was making more money than most people I went to school with, and it was huge for me coming out of prison because I couldn't get a job anywhere. So I was really excited about that at the time. I was all in on that. And then, that started happening with my mom. And then, I was sad, and I was trying to keep like a positive mind about it and like trying to like affirmations and like trying to like, hey, she's going to make it, she's going to beat it and stuff like that. And obviously she didn't, but I was just trying to, hope and I didn't want to face reality. I didn't want to lose mom.
Yeah. It's, I can only imagine, but looking back on it, getting out of 4 years in prison, correct?
Yeah.
2014.
Oh wait, the last time, so I did 4 years, got out for about 2 years, and then went back for 8 months. So I just did 8 months, and then she got diagnosed with the cancer.
Got it. Okay. But I just knowing you for the short time that I have, here and through just us talking a little bit, the story I'm telling myself is that as hard as that probably was, for that 15 months, I just sense some tremendous gratitude in you that you got to spend that time with her.
Oh man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you most grateful for with looking back on that time frame?
The fact that she got to see that I wasn't going to go back and fuck things up again, that, that she had one kid that did make it. So there's when I was in prison the first time, the 4 years, my sister died from heroin, and my mom found her dead on the bathroom. She had to break into the bathroom with a screwdriver and found her dead on the floor. And I was in the hole in prison at the time, and they gave me a 30-second phone call, literally 30 seconds to her, and then threw me back in the cell or whatnot. And that's a whole nother long, crazy story in and of itself. But so here, my mom her only son's in prison, and she just found her only daughter dead on the floor. And so she started this organization called the Ferguson Youth Initiative, which still goes on today, 7 years after her death, and it's a program that helps youth in the community take on leadership roles, and they do a lot of cool shit. But long story short, so she started that, and then that year that she died at the 4th of July parade in Ferguson, she was recognized as the Citizen of the Year award, which was pretty cool. And I got that plaque at home, and just something that I want to model my life by.
That's amazing, man. That she was recognized for that. Obviously super meaningful to you just by looking at you, the way you talk about it. So losing your dad then losing your sister, a 30-second phone call. Just looking back on these experiences, Zach, you come across to me as like a very strong man.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. Very, very, very strong, very determined. Like you just have this look in your eye.
Thanks.
Like, especially when you said, I'm never going back, and I'm doing this, right? And there was like this tremendous amount, even the way you said that, a few minutes ago, there was so much certainty in that. Like there's something that just absolutely grounds you in that. And I have to think that it has something to do with your father, your sister, your mom, the time in prison. So if you can encapsulate all those experiences into this determination that I see, what is keeping you on that path?
It's crazy you even brought that up, man. I'm going to answer that in just a second, but this is another thing that was crazy. Like right before my dad died, I literally learned what death was for the first time about a year or so prior. And I remember learning about it, and we were at my sister's friend's house, at the old house that we were in. And I went to the bathroom and I prayed that I was going to die before my mom, sister, and my dad. And then, my dad died, sister and mom died. It was crazy. It was something that I guess because I was like so scared of it, and then my dad died, and like that hurt so bad. And then I was so scared of like losing people in my life. And that's why like I didn't cry. It was so weird. I didn't cry when my dad died. I stuffed it. And then we got the dog right afterwards, Coco. And like I used to like sleep with my dog because like I was so attached and didn't want to lose it. And like I thought like, all right, I got my dog. My dog's not going to leave. And like I opened up to my dog, and then the dog ran away and then didn't come back. And then that's where I was like, man, I'm not going to get close to anybody no more or something, which I'm not like that anymore, but lived a long time like that.
So I'm curious to talk about that too. You and I have a lot of alignment with that because I look back on a lot of even I have father figures constantly in and out of my life, whether my mom was married to him or not. And I look back on these insane defense mechanisms that I had, especially in my dating life. My wife jokes about it now, but like in the first 7 years that we dated, I broke up with her every single year. And it was always for just ridiculous, stupid reasons. But if I look back on it and really analyze it, I didn't want to lose her. So the only control that I felt was, well, if I break up with her, she can't break up with me.
Bro. I can relate to that so much, man.
Yeah. And in the time period, that makes a lot of sense. But it makes no sense to anybody else, but it makes sense to you. But even that doesn't make sense to you at the time. You look back on it, you're like, oh, that's what that was. So it sounds like going back to when you were in prison, you had your boys at the time. Is that correct?
Yeah. When I went back the second time, I went back 20 days before they were born.
20 days from when they were born or after? Before.
So yeah, I went in and I didn't even know what they looked like for the first 2 months. I was just like trying to imagine if they looked like me or not and all that shit.
Did they come out with a beard like that?
No, not quite.
I was going to say,
gnarly.
Yeah, it would be like, oh, it definitely takes after me. No, so you were married at the time. Is that correct or no?
No, was with Steph. There's another crazy story behind that too, man.
Well, let's hear it. Many of you are looking for a live event to surround yourself with the right people. And what I want to tell you guys is look no further. We are hosting our 4th Dad Edge Summit here in St. Louis, Missouri on October 20th and 21st. I highly recommend if you guys are in the area, or if you're not in the area, it really doesn't matter because we have men who attend this event from literally all over the world. We've had men come in from New Zealand, Australia, the UK, obviously Canada, Mexico, Scotland, and even Dubai to join us for the Dad Edge Summit. Head on over to thedadedge.com. You'll see it right at the top of the screen to get your tickets. We are hosting this thing, like I said, 2nd year in a row, hosting the kickoff at First Form headquarters on the first day. Super pumped about that. This is the 2nd year in a row that the Frisellas actually invited us back to kick off this live event. They just want to support us. They love what we're doing. They love the brand. And last year was absolutely amazing. Highly encourage you guys to step in, grab a ticket, and join us in October. Again, October 20th and 21st. what we're going to be doing is we're going to be helping you men create a plan for your marriage, for parenting, doing the work that makes you come alive. We are going to take a productive pause over those 2 days and formulate exactly how you are going to show up. We're going to be sharing best strategies, best ways to do that, and no better place to do it than the Dad Edge Summit. Again, thedadedge.com. Just go there. It's right there at the top of the homepage. Highly encourage you guys to grab tickets while we still have them. Back to the show. You were married at the time. Is that correct or no?
No, was with Steph. There's another crazy story behind that too, man.
Well, let's hear it.
So, and this is another thing that I've working on and gotten a lot. Actually, made a lot of progress too. But when I went in 20 days before they were born, and then prior to that, I was not a good boyfriend to Steph. I was a dirtbag. Just I was throwing my life away and was nowhere near where I am now. I was going in a different direction there.
Yeah,
and I was cheating on her and doing all these things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg shit right there. But long story short, when I went away, and then after the boys were born, I guess she hooked up with the guy, the father of the child of the girl that I was cheating on her with, if that makes sense. So I was cheating on her with this girl, and then her baby's dad is the guy that Stephanie ended up getting with, and me and her weren't together no more. And it was like, whatever. I was like, okay, whatever. I'm just gonna get out and be a single dad, and I'm gonna play my part, whatever, because I guess that was his way to get back at her and her way to get back at me, and vice versa, and all that. Well, anyways, long story short, that wasn't enough for that guy, and he hit my son Landon and fractured his skull and had brain hemorrhaging, and that was seriously like the only time I really wanted to kill somebody in my life.
Yeah, and
God definitely was in my life and had me in prison for a reason, because I was gonna kill him. I literally plotted his death millions of times in my mind, like it's all like seriously, and I still got to deal with that. But I've done a lot of work with that, like trying to forgiveness, and it's still hard. And I wrote letters and burned them in fire and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just like I don't understand how you can hit a kid, but yeah, that was crazy.
Wow. So you have twin boys, correct?
Yeah.
And are those your only boys?
Boys. Yeah.
Only kids. Sorry.
And I have my stepdaughter. She's 12, and then I have my daughter that's 3.
So you have 4.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're both part of the 4-kid club.
We know.
Okay.
I get it when you say it gets a little chaotic. I understand.
It does, man. So again, you come across to me as this guy who is insanely motivated to show up in life and to show up for your kids. And, so it sounds like you were 12 years ago is when you got out of prison. Is that correct?
No, I've been out for 7 years, and I got out 2014.
2014. Okay.
October 2014.
Okay. Got it. I'm sorry. I was just trying to put the pieces together. So 2014. So what has the past 8 years been like, as far as because going back to, I still have this imprinted on my mind, like this look in your eye, and this tone in your voice of I'm never going back.
Yeah.
And so what has the past 8 years look like for you?
Yeah. So I basically channeled all of that, all the unresolved trauma into doing good things instead of bad things, but it's still there. You know what I'm saying? And so I had this high intense of I'm going to go out and dominate in business and all these things. And, I came home, and the main thing with me was I wanted to be home with my kids. Well, I get home with my kids, and then I get into business, and then I start getting wrapped up in business. And then here I am doing the same shit. Yeah, I'm not dead, but I'm not in my kid's life, because I'm sitting here working 16 to 18 hours a day. Kids are banging on the office door, and I'm I'm trying to get work done, or what, and all they don't care about work. They just want to be with dad and shit, and so I'm starting to have the success and stuff, and all these things happen. Well, when we moved from North County, we were in Bridgeton. We moved out of Bridgeton out here to Wentzville. By that point, I had literally, and that's the whole why I started the underdog empowerment, to prove the motherfuckers wrong thing or whatever. That was really because I never felt like I was good enough from a child. I never felt like it was good enough. And every time I smash all these goals, I'd be man, this is great. This is incredible. All for about 20 seconds. And I'm like, what's next?
What's next?
And it was never enough. And I could never understand that. I was like, well, this is how life's going to be. Well, when we moved out here, I literally did everything that they said I was never going to do. And it still wasn't enough. And I was like, what the fuck? And then a month after, and we moved out into the house the day after Christmas of 2020. And then that next month, January 21st, I hosted my first mastermind in Pensacola, Florida. Had 10.
I saw that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Had 10 people come out, fly across the U.S. And here I am, was in prison a few years back. And I'm sitting here right now and I'm not even soaking in the moment. I'm like, what's next? And I wasn't happy. And I was like, man, you got something fucking wrong with you, man. Like, why aren't you happy? You should be fucking happy right now. You know, like you got literally everything, you know, like that you could ever wanted. Like I wouldn't have been able to imagine this life, you know, in that prison cell back then because I couldn't see that far. And so I just knew it was, and I left that event and went straight to interview Sean Whalen before I went home. And then here's this guy and represents, like, not saying like he's everything I want to be, but just represents leadership in all phases of the game that what I want in my life. And I was like, man, there's something more than I need to, there's some work I got to do. And so that's what started me to do my own like personal healing journey and inner work and stuff or whatnot. And that was last year. And all of 2021, I mean, it was the best year that we had business wise, whatever, all that stuff. But there was a lot of like feeling of low and like as all these feelings are coming up for the first time. And, you know, that doesn't feel good when you're going through it, but it's the most impactful work you could do though, without a doubt.
No, helping people get to where they want to go is amazing, fulfilling work. But I get you, man. I'm going to say something to you, and I think it might hit you in the heart because this comes from my heart. I think when you come from a background where there's no dad in your life, and you come from an upbringing of challenges, that you're seeking validation from the depth, the deepest part of I'm talking like the abyss of your soul. And validation meaning, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? And there's always going to be a what's next.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that. I honestly think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, you know, young men who still have that little boy in us who desperately just wants to hear from dad, hey man, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if there's ever enough. I really don't, which to be honest is a blessing. And it's also a curse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I know, you know what I mean? It can be a blessing because a lot of people I'm sure ask you, as they ask me, how in God's name do you do it all? You know, how in God's name are you so driven? And sometimes I'm like, well, I can't think to be any other way because but for us, I don't think there's a whole lot of rest sometimes, right? There isn't a whole lot of kickback. Right. And there are moments, I think, that, and to be honest, I mean, I'm going to be 47 in a month, and I try to now like be very diligent about identifying those moments. Like last night, I'm playing wiffle ball with my 6 and 8 year old, and I find myself sometimes my wheels are still turning with what am I going to do next? What am I going to achieve next? What's the next thing? Like, what do I need? Who do I want to interview? Like, who do I want to help? Like, and at times you just need to shut it down. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, it's interesting. You talk about the breath, right? That, right. That, you know, cause that activates the rest and digest and clear thoughts and that kind of thing. And I just last night playing wiffle ball with my kids, I'm just like, shut up. Like telling your own voice and I'm like watching my kids like swing the bat and them throwing the ball and then light up when they hit it. And those are the moments that I think you have to be like, yeah, this is why I do the work I do. These are the moments that you create, because if your entire life is like drive, achieve, you're going to look back. You and I are going to be on our deathbed and we're going to be like, for what?
We didn't experience any of it.
Yeah, we didn't experience anything because we were so driven on the next thing.
We were living in the future the whole time. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of guys out there. In fact, I know a lot of men are like that.
Especially the high achiever types that you see all in our feeds that are like, I'm a dominate. They got a lot of shit they got to deal with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
For real.
The people who achieve the most usually have a whole lot of trauma, to some degree, right?
Yeah.
So let's switch over to marriage. Your wife's name is Steph?
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. So how long have you been married?
We've been married since 2016.
Okay. How long have you known each other?
2012, right after I got out of prison.
Okay. So 10 years, been married 6 years. What have you learned about marriage, and how do you go about marriage with her to make sure that's aligned?
There's no arrival, there's no destination, and it's a constant work of being it. For me, it's like, man, I gotta really like figure out what her wants and needs are, and she's not gonna tell me, because women just don't tell you. They want you to figure it out, right? But she just wants the affection. She wants to know that she matters. She's important to me, even though I'm running and gunning, building things. She wants that text during the day of, that I'm thinking of her, or doing things, still showing up for dates. And I don't always do those things. Definitely didn't do them in the past when I was so intense on the driven, but I'm becoming way better at that now. As now, man, last year was a blessing though, even though it was a lot of it, those feelings coming up. I went from 16 to 18 hour days to 16-hour work weeks. Like I work 4 hours Monday through Thursday. Sometimes on Friday I work 20 hours a week, but that's it, man. Like, and now I'm spending the time with my kids and shit. But I still got a lot of work to do, because like I do that a lot with my relationship. I got shit to work on, because I like to shut down a lot, and I don't like to. It's hard. It's been hard for me in the past to tell her that I'm hurt. Like what you just did hurt. It made me feel like I wasn't good enough. It reminded me of shit with my mom or whatever. But I'm starting to communicate those things to her, and we're making the most progress we've ever made in our marriage. So I'm excited about that.
You want to hear something really fast? So I love what you just said there, like this communication thing, right? Around authenticity and vulnerability, because a lot of guys just heard what you said, and me too. There's a part of us that are just like, I'm not going to tell her that.
Right. You
can't tell her. It sounds needy. It sounds weak. It sounds this. I just interviewed yesterday a relationship expert. Her name is Teresa Young. She manages a podcast called the Respected Man Podcast. And she really knows this stuff backwards, forwards, upside down, as far as like, what does a woman truly, truly want from her man, right? She's done surveys where thousands of women have given their points of view on men and communication. There's one thing that above all else that a woman wants, and that's your most authentic, vulnerable self. Now, there's a caveat to that, right? Because when men think of authenticity and vulnerability, they think of like this needy, desperate, feminine sponge, right? Just weeping, right? And it's just like,
no.
And she and I talked about this. That's actually not what it is. What it really is you can remain like in your masculine power, not overpower, but masculine power. Be confident, be somewhat direct, not in a rude way, to just be like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I feel. And, this is what I think, without being like, yeah, so I really just want to tell you that you kind of hurt me. And because that just sounds terrible and it feels terrible, but there are ways you can communicate like, hey, I'm not really on board with this, or this really didn't land the right way for me. And let me tell you why. Women actually really appreciate that. In fact, they feel more connected to us when we can stand in our confident power and tell them where we're at, versus what a lot of guys do, me included. I did it for a long time. Which is when we're going through something, we stuff it down. Mm-hmm. Hey, what's going on? Nothing.
Yep.
you sure? Because you don't seem like no, I'm fine. And we think from our male perspective, well, I don't want to be weak and I don't want to burden her with this. So I'll just tell her I'm fine and she'll get it, and what women will tell you. And my wife actually had a come to Jesus conversation with me, years ago. I went through a very traumatic event back in 2017, and I went through 8 months of PTSD because of it. And I went through counseling and got through it. But during that 8 months, when stress and things like that would rear up for me, she would check in on me. I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good. Don't worry about me. I'm good. Right. I would just stuff it down, because in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to burden her with it. Last thing, we're raising 4 boys. Last thing I want to do is burden her with something else. Like, she's got enough things on her mind, and I need to be the strong stoic. I'm fine. I got this. We're good. I'll never forget a conversation my wife had with me. And she sat me down one day and she goes, you know, you're distant from me and you're not connected to me. And I know you're not fine. You're telling me you're fine because you think that that's strong. And you think that you're being there for me by keeping me at distance when I really know you're suffering, but you're not telling me. And here's what's really happening, just so you know. My wife and I have been together for 25 years, been married for 19. I have never heard my wife say these words. And in my mind, I was protecting her. But these were the words, you're losing me. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? She goes, you're losing me. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm losing you? She goes, we've been going through this for months. You're not opening up to me. You're disconnected from me. Everything is fine. I'm good. You're pushing me away. You think you're protecting me, but this has gone on for so long that I'm now questioning if we're going to stay married. And I'm like, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm doing this to keep us married. Right? Yeah. And she's like, by you not letting me into what's going on, you're losing me. And that was like, dude, that rattled me. And I was like, holy crap. She goes, if you just tell me what's going on. And this is one thing I'll never forget. She goes, you're my king. I'm your queen. And in order for us to rule together, sometimes we have to go to battle together. And how am I supposed to be your queen if you don't let me into your world? And I was just like, I was speechless, right? And so like from then on out, I mean, that was 5 years ago. I let her in on everything now. But I present it in such a way that it's not needy, that it's not feminine and spongy and weird, right? I'm just like, hey, I'm just letting you know, here's what's going on. This is where I'm at. Because the last thing that I want to tell her is, I'm fine, I'm good, stay away.
Right.
Because now I know the detrimental effects that will have on our relationship. And it sounds like that's kind of what's happened with you guys as well.
I'm in the early stages of it still, but that's really, I'm glad you shared that story with me because it gives me a lot of encouragement and stuff moving forward. Because that was so hard to start sharing that with her. And I do, like you say, I do it in a way, it's still hard for me to like cry in front of other people. I'm like, when those emotions come up, like I like to be alone and let them out, you know. I should be at a point where it's okay to do it around anybody, you know, because it is okay to do it around anybody. But yeah, man, you feel weird though whenever you do, and like I felt weird sharing that with Steph and stuff, like telling her, like, hey, but I don't like that when you do it. It hurts. I wouldn't say it like
right,
you can't do that,
right?
But I'd be like, I really don't like that shit when you do that because it reminds me of the shit I went through with my mom, and that shit hurts, and I don't want to be reminded of that, you know. And that's a cool way to do it. You're still kind of got your guards up a little bit, but at least you're letting out the reasons why, and it's communicating, and now she knows. Yeah. You know, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. I also want to ask you, so your boys are 12.
Bella's 12, boys are 8.
Oh, boys are 8. Okay. Do all of your kids know about your past?
Yeah, not all the way. Bella knows the most. She's 12. The boys know I was in prison and whatnot. I brought them with me when I went and spoke the last time, so they got to hear a little bit more of the story or whatnot. But they know a little bit of the past. Lindley obviously is too young.
Sure. How has that impacted your relationship, both from maybe a positive perspective and maybe even some of the things that might be challenging?
You know, every time they always ask me questions about it, I'm like, man, are they too young for us to be having this conversation yet? And so some of the things I haven't talked with them, you know, a lot of the things I haven't talked with them about yet. But I feel like the stuff that we have talked about, I think it's been helpful because they get to see Dad now and what you should do, you know, and how I'm leading now is, I'm not perfect, obviously, but it's a good example now, you know, versus who I was back then. So my hope is that, you know, that they get this, they pick up on all the good stuff and they don't have to go down the same stuff that I did. And to be honest with you, man, Larry, I've been worried somewhat because I see a lot of myself of what I was doing, of what Landon's doing, like stuffing emotions and the outbursts and stuff, and he just shows a lot of those signs and stuff, and you can't like make someone heal or nothing. And so all I can do is just provide a safe structure for him to operate in and stuff. And so, you know, I've been doing stuff. It sounds silly, but there's these little pads that you can put on your bed that you plug into the wall, and they get the earth's electricity, you know, like whenever you go stand on the ground barefoot, you know, it puts off that energy that literally heals and causes inflammation to go down, all that shit. Well, they got these pads that you just connect into the wall, and it gives, obviously you don't get the same nutrients from the ground that the earth puts off, but you get the energy. And so that helps bring your nervous system down and chill out. And, you know, I was in a constant fight or flight response, and I think that's where Landon's at, you know, with him being traumatized when he was, you know, when that guy hit him and other things. And plus I've traumatized him too, whenever I was working all the time and no, get out, and yelling at him, stuff like that, you know. And so I'm just trying to provide a structure, you know, for him to you know, be chill and not always on a fight or flight response. And hopefully, you know, he'll be able to get that out as time comes, you know.
You know what? You bring that up as a challenge, right? And it is, right? But no better man to be in his life, in my opinion, because you see it. You know what I mean? Because like you see it, and maybe you even recognize for what it could be. And, you know, I think that makes you probably a more effective guide for him, you know, because you know probably what he's feeling firsthand. You know, think about it for a second with, you know, any kid that might be going through that, and parents that don't know about that, and they're just like, oh, he's just being a kid, or he's just doing this, just doing that, and they sweep it under the carpet, and they don't have like that guide, and the kid doesn't have that guide in their life to be like, hey man, I see you, I get you, like I'm here, right? So think about that perspective, that in a way, you know, he's insanely lucky that he's got, you know, a dad that sees that. He's taking steps forward and being proactive to do that. Let me ask you this, kind of a weird question. I don't know if you've ever been asked this before. When you're in a room full of other parents, like the dads and the moms, you know, the story I'm telling myself is that you're an outlier. Yeah. Right?
Bro, everywhere I go.
Right. So what are some things that, you know, go through your mind when you're in a crowd of, I would say, I don't know, what do you call them? Your stereotypical parents, right? Because like, hey, listen, and while you kind of gel on that question, there are times where, you know, people have come up and told me like, I feel very self-conscious around you. Like dads have told me that. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you know, sometimes I just judge my actions with my kid, like while I'm with you. I'm like, brother, if you were in my house, a fly on the wall, you would see all kinds of, you know, imperfections and craziness. It's not a perfect world.
Right.
This is a practice, and this is a constant area of our lives where we're growing. Like no one does this crap perfect. Right. And you can't, I don't judge anyone, right, for where they're at in their journey. But at the same time, like, I'm sure you probably put off like an impression with people, and people probably put off an impression with you, you know, and sometimes those dynamics are very difficult to navigate. But what is that showing? How has that shown up for you?
You're a smart dude, bro. Straight up, man. Yeah. Everywhere I go, it's like, it's funny. I just made a post yesterday. It got a lot of laughs, but it's something I do like kind of wonder. I was like, man. So I go out, I'm getting a sandwich at Pickleman's the other day, and then the cashier's like, yo, sick tats, man. Where you get them at? I'm like, prison. And then he immediately freezes up. Bug-eyed.
Right. Do you want extra mayonnaise with your sandwich? Like, no, I'm kidding. Yeah.
And he's all awkward and silent. And I'm like, it's a long story, man, or whatever. And, and he smiles back nervously. And like, that's just, I would put on the post, and it got a good laugh or whatnot, because it is kind of funny. But like, that's everywhere I go, you know, it's like, and I'm not mad about it. I got the tattoos, and I got the beard and what I did to myself or whatnot. But that impression, what you said, you put off like an impression. I do. I always try and lay it on thick of being super nice and soft, and show them that, hey, I'm not a monster or nothing. Like, I'm actually a cool dude, and like, you know, but it's always weird at first, and people are always on edge, you know, until they start to get to know me. Yeah,
I can definitely see that. As far as, I want to go back to just, so you have 2 daughters, correct?
Yeah.
2 daughters, 2 boys. So raising sons, raising daughters,
lots of firearms, I'm sure, at your house for when boys come around and for years to come, right?
I'm working on getting my license back so I can't have firearms.
Right. But let's talk about daughters first. What is most meaningful so 2 questions. What's most meaningful for you to teach them? And what have you learned from them?
Man, such a great question, bro. I feel shame and guilt still that I got to deal with. Cause Bella, I wasn't really there her first part of her life because I was so wrapped up in the business. I wasn't there for any of the kids or my wife, emotionally or even physically. Like I just wasn't present. And the times that I did hang out with them, there were, I take that back. There was plenty of times where we went and actually did shit that was cool, but most of the time I was not there. And, so now that I am, I'm learning though, it's hard. It's a hard dynamic with my stepdaughter because she still has her dad, even though, sometimes she doesn't see him that much. I'll just put it that way. And so she doesn't always have like a father figure. And like I've been showing up and doing stuff with her, and we've actually been, our relationship's actually the best it's ever been. It's been growing.
Great. She's 12.
Yeah.
And that's a tough age.
Yeah. Cause all she wants to do is hang out with friends.
Right.
You know? But we're starting to actually build a really strong relationship. And that's the first time we've had that, which is really cool. But I get it. You know, she's been kind of defensive and not, you know, pushed back on me a lot because I wasn't there for her, you know, in those early parts, and she just doesn't want to get hurt again. So I understand. But yeah, daughters though, it's definitely more gentle and more loving. And, anytime, you know, they're around, I try to be on my A game, and not always successful with that, but I try to be on my A game as much as possible and just show them how, you know, a man's supposed to be and how he's supposed to treat a woman. That's the main thing with me. So it's a different dynamic with the daughters. Sons, I just try to lead by example because they're not going to do what I say. They're going to do what I do. And so I just want to show up and do and be there for them and show them that I see them, I hear them, and that, you know, I want them to express themselves just be them. And that's hard. That's that third part, because kids, that's all the main things they want is they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be able to express themselves genuinely.
Yeah.
That third one is hard because sometimes they want to express themselves and do something dangerous or stupid or something. You're like, no, or whatever. And so it's like, all right, how do I balance this without being mean, but also communicate that, hey, we can't do that. So, you know, in some situations you could be real stressed out or some, you know, there's so many different things to be happen. That one's a little bit harder than the others. For
sure, man. Just to compliment one thing you said, especially with daughters, right? I just wrote a book. It's coming out September 6th. It's called The Pursuit of Legendary Fatherhood. And I think it's like 24 chapters long, 85,000 words. I submitted the first draft, obviously, to my editor. And she's like, you know, and I just, you know, you kind of write it, you know, from, I've written it from a place of doing almost 1,000 interviews here on the podcast and people I've learned from in our community and that kind of thing. And my editor came back and she was like, I had 2 editors, one male, one female. And the female came back and said, you have 0 content on here on how to raise a girl. And I'm like, and I was like, oh yeah, good catch. Cause I don't have any. So I had to go, you know, I actually had to go do a lot of research in old podcasts, like where men, you know, high level men were talking about how they raise. Cause one thing I've always asked from podcast guests, you know, Bedros, you know, one of them of several, you know, how do you go about raising a strong, confident young woman? And so I had to go back to all those podcasts and really take like the gems, right? And I wrote an entire chapter in there, and I obviously said it wasn't my advice because I don't have any firsthand knowledge, but one of them that came back over and over and over, I can't even tell you how many men said it. I have to show my daughter what it means to be loved by how I love their mom. Like that was a big one. And I'm like, oh man, he's like, and taking even that a step further, several men came back and said, I take my daughter out on dates and I do things really, really right on those dates, you know, open the door for her. You know, I pull her chair out for her. You know, I ask her questions. I really listen. I put my phone away because I want to set that bar so high that when she does go out to date, she has me as a reference of how I've loved her mom, even though it hasn't been perfect, right? She sees bad and good. But overall, like I try to make sure that example is there. And then another step would be, you know, taking her out on a date where she knows what does it mean to have an attentive man, right? Because that way she's not going to put up with the dirt bags that come in and out of her life. And so I think that's incredible that
and even if you have boys, right? I still think it's important to show this is how you love a woman in your life. You know what I mean?
How you show it for your wife.
Yeah, how you show it for your wife. Dude, this has been awesome. I do have one final question for you. I've heard you say the word God a few times. Is faith a big part of your life, or is that something that you're really focused on?
Yeah, so I'd never liked going to church, but I do believe in God, and I do pray, and I you could be whatever, energy source, whatever you want to call it. I just call mine God.
Yeah. How has that been an element of strength in your life? Like, how does that show up for you?
Man, nowadays it's always I'm praying like, God, thank you, please keep me humble. Thank you, please keep me humble.
Yeah.
There was a point, man, before I started doing this inner work, man, where I started getting like a big head, man, and started getting what's a good word for it? I can't think of it right now, and if I try to, it just won't come in. But grandiose.
Okay. Yeah.
Started getting grandiose. Started thinking like, man, you can't be stopped and all this stuff. And I don't ever want to get to that again. And I see, there's some leaders out there that have like ego is a good thing. All right. I'm not with the, hey, ego is your enemy thing. You need your ego. Like I'm trying to build a relationship with my ego and trust it. But I also don't want my ego so big where I think I'm the center of the universe and I can't be stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I started getting there, and I was like, this ain't me and stuff. And so I just pray a lot to be humble. But man, God got me through a lot of stuff, man. Like when I lost my sister in that hole, I was in an 8x10 cell 24/7, and just nothing but me and my thoughts, and reading. I was reading the Bible at the time. We had that in old Western books to choose from, and so those scriptures really helped me get through a lot of dark times.
Wow. I love the humility thing, because I got to tell you, when we first got connected, and just so the audience knows when we got connected. So I've followed Zach, for quite some time. And what I can tell you is that I saw that side of you on social, Yeah. And then when we met each other by fluke, right, at wrestling, I expected to see that side of you, and you were the exact opposite. Like, just very humble, like very, like nice to meet you, man. Hey, let's exchange phone numbers. And I expected you to be like more like an Andy Frisella, like 24/7 at all times. And but that's cool, man. I mean, because I think also humility, I think it keeps us in gratitude.
Yes,
and it keeps us appreciative. Right. Because I think when we have that persona of like, it's like a bull in a china shop at all times. I mean, listen, like that intensity it serves us sometimes. Yes. Right. Yeah. And it pushes us. But at the same time, the humility, I think, kind of calms us down, and it lets you see things that you have gratitude for and appreciation for that you otherwise wouldn't. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, man.
1000%. Yeah, dude, this has been awesome, man. I want to make sure that the audience, the Dad Edge audience, can connect with you. Things that you're doing, things you have coming out, social. Where can guys find you? And most importantly, too, as you look over the next 12 months, what are you creating? What are you doing?
Thanks for asking, man. It's crazy. This is the time where I'm actually going all in on my purpose, man. So I'm launching Alpha Underdog. I've been talking about it for the last year and a half, been building it my whole life. But real quick story. When I finally broke through in the business, it was with podcasting, helping people with their podcasts. And that's cool. But the podcast business, I'm fully removed from the operations. It's running, you know what I'm saying? And that business was and still was the stepping stone to this. And, Alpha Underdog's what I'm most passionate about, period. And we're doing our first live event here in St. Louis. I want you to come.
When are you doing it?
July 15th.
Oh, sweet, man.
Thanks, man.
Where's it going to be? So, yeah, all the logistics.
The Palladian, you know where that's at?
I don't, but yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
It's a nice little, a lot of people get married there, but it's just like a sick layout. I really love it. But, so I'm launching that July 15th, but I'm going to start doing them every single quarter, and I want to have you come out and speak at them without a doubt.
Dude, I would love it. Be honored, man.
For sure. But that whole thing, it's going to be some different phases. It's going to be the live events and the mastermind launch first, and then we're going to launch the apparel brand, and then we're going to launch the app for the A5 method, which is just a methodology of mind, body, soul, relationships, finance, putting them all together. Obviously, you can't live in balance, but having them working together synergistically in harmony. And then after the app, then we'll launch the book that ties it all together.
A book?
Yeah.
Tell me about the book. What's the book going to be about?
It's just going to be mainly about all the stuff we talked about here today, all of it and in detail, and whatever happens from now until then, what I learned from then too and stuff. So I feel like I'm ready for a book now. I wrote a book in 2016 when I was in network marketing still. I pulled the print version. It's still on Amazon, called Prison to Promised Land, but I didn't really know. I just got out of prison, didn't really know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I conquered that part, but there's still a lot of other stuff. So I feel like I'm ready for it now.
Dude, that's amazing, man. And so social media, website, where's all that we can find for you?
Make it super simple, underdogempowerment.com. It's got the podcast on there. It's right there on the front page, and then all my social medias are right down at the bottom of it.
That's awesome, man. Well, guys, listen, you're not going to have to go far for the show notes at all. If you want to connect with Zach, if you want to find out more about his live event, his podcast, his apparel brand, obviously doing a lot of good things out in the world, all you have to do is go to thedadedge.com/378 for this show. Again, thedadedge.com/378. Zach, dude, what an incredible story, man. And you know what? I'm really glad that even though it's an old book for you, right, From Prison to Promised Land, because that is a huge theme that I think I took, and maybe the audience took from this, that no matter what challenges show up in your life, there can be that promised land, even if you're an underdog, right? So, dude, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Man, thank you so much, dude. I mean this when I say it. This is the best interview I've ever had.
Wow, man.
And
thank you.
I've been on almost 400 podcasts. You're legit. You brought the only dude that ever got me to cry on a podcast, by the way. So I owe you one. I'm going to try to get you on mine next. Thank you, man.
Oh, man, seriously, I take that as a compliment. I got to be honest, I have a very hard time with compliments. But you know, there's Zach, there's not a lot of good things. There's not a lot of things I'm good at. I got to be honest, right? My kids will tell you that. But there's one thing I do hang my hat on, and that is I can pull the best out of people with the environment and the questions that I ask. But I also have almost 1,000 episodes under my belt, so that there's some practice there. But man, seriously, so much gratitude. Thank you so much for saying that. It means the world.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for having me on the show, brother.
You bet. Again, guys, thedadedge.com/378 will have all this stuff in the show notes for you guys. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.